"You have no future," my father said. "Pack your things and get out of my house." He didn't yell. That was the part that stayed with me the longest. He said it the same way someone might say pass the salt. Flat, certain, already decided. My mother was standing at the kitchen counter with her back to me. She didn't turn around. I was 27 years old, standing in the entryway of the house I'd grown up in, holding a mug of coffee I no longer wanted. "My name is Vivian Cole," and that was the last morning I spent under my parents' roof. To understand how we got there, you have to understand my family. My father spent 31 years as a civil engineer. My mother taught high school chemistry for 24. In their world, success had a very specific shape. A degree from a 4-year university, a salaried position with benefits, a title that meant something at dinner parties. Anything outside that shape wasn't just unconventional. It was suspicious. Maybe even shameful. My older brother fit the shape perfectly. He graduated from Penn State, got hired at a consulting firm in Philadelphia, married someone with a master's degree in finance. Every Christmas, my mother printed his LinkedIn achievements into casual conversation like she was reading from a script. My father would nod along, satisfied. The way people look when something goes exactly as planned. I did not go according to plan. I dropped out of my junior year at Ohio State. Not because I was failing. Not because I couldn't handle the coursework. I left because I had already started something that was growing faster than I could manage from a dorm room, and staying felt like choosing the smaller life on purpose. I had been designing custom interiors since I was 19, small apartments at first. Friends of friends who couldn't afford real designers but wanted something that didn't look like a furniture catalog. Word spread quietly. By my junior year, I had more clients than I had hours, a small savings account I'd built entirely on my own, and a growing certainty that the thing I was building was real. I tried to tell my parents once. Junior year, Thanksgiving break, the kitchen smelled like roasting garlic and my mother's good candles. I said I was thinking about taking a leave of absence to focus on my business. My father set down his fork. My mother stopped stirring. I explained what I was doing, the clients, the revenue, the projects I had lined up. I tried to make it sound logical, professional, the kind of thing they could hold in their hands and examine. My father looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Interior decorating isn't a career, Vivian. It's a hobby for women who married well." My mother didn't disagree. I finished the semester. Then I quietly left, told the registrar's office I was withdrawing, and drove back to Columbus without mentioning it to anyone in my family. For the next 4 years, I didn't bring up what I was doing. It was easier. Every time I visited, my parents asked polite, distancing questions. "Are you still doing that decorating thing? Are you making enough to cover your bills?" And I gave short answers that didn't invite follow-up. They assumed I was freelancing in some vague, undisciplined way. They assumed I hadn't figured things out yet. They never asked what I was actually building. By the time I was 26, I had a staff of 8, a studio space in the short north neighborhood of Columbus, and contracts with 3 commercial developers who hired us to design the interiors of boutique hotels and upscale apartment complexes across the Midwest. My company, Ember Studio, had been featured in Columbus Monthly and shortlisted for a regional design award. We had crossed 7 figures in annual revenue. None of that existed, as far as my parents were concerned, because I had never found a way to make them listen long enough to hear it. The morning everything broke open started the same way most family disasters do, with a Sunday dinner that felt normal right up until it didn't. My parents had driven up from their house in Lancaster to have lunch with me and my brother at a restaurant downtown. It was supposed to be a birthday celebration, mine. My brother had suggested the place, a nice Italian spot near the short north. He knew the neighborhood. He had been to my studio once, unannounced, about a year earlier, and I'd given him a quiet tour. He hadn't said much. Just looked around slowly, taking it in. Lunch started fine. We ordered. My brother told a story about a project at work. My mother asked him about his kid's school play. Then my father looked at me. "So," he said, Any update on your situation? My situation. That was what they'd taken to calling it. Not my business. Not my career. My situation. Things are good, I said. My mother tilted her head with that particular expression she had perfected. The one that managed to combine sympathy and disappointment into a single look. Your father and I worry about you. That's all. We just want to see you settled. I am settled, I said. You know what we mean, my father said. I did know what they meant. They meant they wanted to see me with a salaried job and a 401k, and something to put on a holiday card that required no explanation. Dad, I started. Your brother has been at the same firm for 9 years, my father said. He has stability. He has a plan. He wasn't angry. Exactly. He was instructional, the way he used to be when I was 12 and had done something that required correction. Some people aren't meant for structure, Vivian. But sooner or later, you have to get serious. I am serious, I said. You've been saying that for 4 years. My brother shifted in his seat. He glanced at me. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Not quite discomfort, not quite apology. More like someone watching a slow-motion thing they can't stop. She's doing well, actually, he said quietly. My father ignored him. I love you, he said to me. But love doesn't mean I have to pretend. You dropped out of college. You've been freelancing for years with no stability, no retirement, no real future. I don't know what you're waiting for, but you're not getting younger. The table was silent. No degree, my mother added softly, like a footnote. No real credentials. I sat with that for a moment. Then my father said, honestly, Vivian, at some point it becomes embarrassing. For all of us. I put my napkin on the table. I'd spent years trying to find the right moment to tell them. Years editing myself, waiting for an opening, telling myself that one day they'd ask the right question and I'd be able to answer it. But they never asked. And sitting there, listening to my father say the word embarrassing, with that calm certainty, I realized I was done looking for the opening. Okay, I said. I picked up my purse. I said goodbye to my brother, and the look on his face was something I still think about. Not surprised. Resigned, maybe. Or perhaps quietly relieved that something long overdue was finally happening. I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't call them that week. They didn't call me either. I came home to my apartment, made tea, sat on my couch, and felt something that surprised me. Not grief, not anger. Mostly just a deep, exhausted quiet. I'd been performing confusion about my own life for so long, shrugging, deflecting, giving them the version of myself that matched their worry, that I'd forgotten how much energy it took. I stopped spending it. For the next 6 weeks, I focused entirely on work. There was a lot to focus on. We were in the middle of our largest project to date, the interior build-out for a boutique hotel in downtown Cincinnati, 12 floors, 83 rooms, 3 restaurant spaces, a rooftop bar. The developer, a company called Hartwell Properties, had found us through a referral and signed a contract worth more than anything we'd done before. My team was excellent. The work was absorbing. I was busy in the good way, the way where days end and you've been so present inside the hours that you forgot to notice them passing. I didn't think about my parents much. Then my brother called on a Tuesday afternoon in early November. Hey, he said, heads up. Mom and Dad are coming to Cincinnati next month for a thing. What thing? He paused. The Hartwell Properties holiday event. They got invited through someone at Dad's old firm. One of his former colleagues is involved with the company somehow. I don't know the details. They mentioned it at dinner last week, and I thought you should know. I was quiet for a moment. Does that create a problem? He asked. I thought about it. Ember Studios' name was on every wall of that build-out. Our work would be visible in every corner of that hotel. The event was a preview reception for investors and partners. The kind of evening where the design was, in a very literal sense, the thing being shown off. No, I said finally. It doesn't create a problem. The event was the first Friday in December. I drove down the evening before, checked into the hotel we'd been building for 7 months, and walked through the finished spaces one last time before guests arrived. My team had done something extraordinary. The lobby had warm plaster walls and custom millwork in bleached oak, The restaurant off the main entrance was intimate and layered. Candlelight and hand-formed ceramic tiles and drapery that pooled just slightly on the floor. The rooftop bar had a panoramic view of the Ohio River and fixtures we'd sourced from a metalworker in Kentucky. I stood there alone for a while, in the middle of all of it, and felt the particular satisfaction of a thing made well. The reception started at 7. By 7:30, the rooms were full of developers, investors, city officials, and design industry people who'd been following the project. My team was there. Our contact at Hartwell, a director named Ms. Okafor, moved through the crowd making introductions, clearly proud of what the space had become. I was standing near the bar talking to one of our lighting vendors when I saw them come in. My father was wearing the gray sport coat he reserved for occasions he considered important. My mother had her good pearl earrings on. They were with another couple, older, the man with the comfortable posture of someone who'd spent decades in corporate rooms. They hadn't seen me yet. I watched them move through the lobby. My mother touched one of the wall sconces gently, the way people do when they're admiring a material. My father looked up at the ceiling detail and arched plaster soffit. We'd spent 2 weeks getting right, and nodded slowly approvingly. They were enjoying the space, our space. Ms. Okafor spotted me from across the room and made her way over, bringing a small group with her. The couple with my parents was apparently among them. I saw the moment my mother registered my face. She stopped mid-sentence, her expression going through several things very quickly. My father turned to see what she was looking at. Ms. Okafor smiled warmly and touched my arm. "And this," she said to the group, "is Vivian Cole, the founder and creative director of Ember Studio. She and her team designed everything you've been walking through tonight." The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt longer. My mother's mouth opened slightly. My father looked at me, then at Ms. Okafor, then back at me, as if he was trying to locate an explanation that made more sense than the one in front of him. "Vivian," Ms. Okafor continued, "these are some of our partners for the evening, the Hendersons and—" She gestured toward my parents. "We've met," I said. She looked between us, sensing something. "Oh, wonderful, small world." My parents said nothing. The conversation moved on the way conversations do at events. Someone asked a question about the tile sourcing. Someone else wanted to know about the rooftop construction timeline. And I answered with the same calm focus I brought to every professional interaction. My parents stood slightly apart from the group, quiet in a way I'd never seen them be quiet before. Eventually, the group dispersed. My father and mother remained. For a moment, we just looked at each other. My mother spoke first. "You designed all of this?" "My team and I, yes." She looked around slowly. The restaurant, the ceiling, the warm, considered light falling across every surface. "Since when?" she asked. "Since always," I said. "You just never asked." My father looked down at the floor. Not in the way that people look down when they're bored or dismissive. In the way they look down when something heavy has landed on them and they need a moment before they can speak. "The business you mentioned," he said. "At Thanksgiving. Years ago?" "Yes, this is that business. This is that business." He nodded slowly. He didn't say anything for a long time. My mother reached out and touched my arm, just briefly, just once. "Vivian," she said, and then stopped, because I think she didn't know yet what sentence came after my name. We found a quieter corner of the restaurant space, away from the reception noise. The three of us sat at a small table near the window, with the river visible beyond it, dark and slow and indifferent. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked. I'd thought about this question for years. The answer wasn't simple, but it also wasn't complicated. "I tried to," I said. "Thanksgiving, junior year. You were both very clear about what you thought." Neither of them argued with that. "After that," I continued, "every time I visited, I waited. I kept thinking, if I waited for the right moment, if I explained it correctly, you'd hear me. But you never asked. Not once in 4 years did either of you ask what I was actually working on." My father looked up. "We thought. I know what you thought." I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that, because people expect anger in stories like this, and I understand why. But the anger had burned through years ago. What was left underneath it was something quieter and harder to name, something like grief for all the versions of these conversations we'd never had. You thought I was drifting. You thought I hadn't figured it out. You made that assumption, and then you stopped looking. My mother's eyes were bright. We were worried about you. I know, I said. But worried isn't the same as curious. You worried at me. You never asked me. My father exhaled slowly. He looked older to me in that moment than I'd ever seen him look. Not in years, but in something else. Some quality of weariness that comes not from time, but from understanding something too late. I said some things at lunch, he started. You said a lot of things, I said. Over a lot of years. Yes. He didn't look away. I did. Across the room, the reception continued. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed at something, hummed with the pleasant noise of people inside a room they found beautiful, and I sat in it with my parents, in the corner, in the quiet. I owe you an apology, my father said. The words came out evenly, deliberately, the way he said things he'd decided to commit to. I judged your choices without understanding them. I made you feel like you had to hide something you'd worked hard to build. That was wrong. My mother nodded. We both owe you that. I let that sit for a moment. I appreciate you saying it, I told them. And I meant it. Genuinely. But I also need to be honest here. Apologies at the finish line land differently than understanding at the start. They don't erase the Sunday dinners, or the Christmas conversations, or the word embarrassing said across a restaurant table. They don't give back the years of performing smallness to keep the peace. What they do is acknowledge that something happened. That it was real. That it mattered. That was worth something. Just not everything it once would have been. My brother arrived about 20 minutes later. He'd gotten a text, apparently, from one of our parents. My mother, I suspected, because his expression when he walked in had that particular quality of someone who was surprised to be unsurprised. He stopped in the doorway of the restaurant space and looked around at the walls, the light, the ceiling, the whole gathered weight of everything we'd spent 7 months making. Then he looked at me. I figured it would be something like this, he said. You've been to the studio, I reminded him. I know. I should have said more then. He sat down at the table, looked at our parents, then back at me. She's been running one of the best interior design firms in Ohio for the last 5 years. I found that out on my own, by the way. She didn't tell me either. I would have, I said, if anyone had asked. Marta smiled at that. Just slightly. Fair. The 4 of us sat there for a while. We didn't resolve everything. I want to be truthful about that because I think stories like this sometimes suggest that one honest conversation can repair years of accumulated distance, and I don't think that's how it works. What we did was start. We had the first real conversation we'd had in years, maybe ever. My father asked about the business, the actual questions, the specific ones, how we found clients, how the team was structured, what the pipeline looked like. My mother asked about the hotel project, about the sourcing decisions, about how long it took to develop a design language for a space. They were genuinely curious. I could tell the difference. That was new. We didn't stay long after that. There was still a reception happening, and I had people to talk to, and things to manage, and a team to thank. We said goodbye near the lobby. My mother hugged me. A real hug, not the kind she gave at holiday doorways where arms went through the motions without any weight behind them. My father shook my hand. Then, after a pause, he hugged me too. We're proud of you, Vivian, he said. It was something I had wanted to hear for years. Standing there in the lobby of the hotel my company had built, I waited for those words to land the way I'd always imagined they would, the way they would have landed when I was 23, and aching for exactly this. They didn't land like that. They landed more softly, less urgently, like something that had once been a necessity and was now, quietly, just a gift. Appreciated, received, no longer the thing I was building toward. That distinction took me a while to understand. I thought about it on the drive home. The Ohio winter going dark and flat outside the car windows, Columbus an hour ahead of me. I had spent the better part of my adult life in a kind of low-grade longing for my parents to see me clearly, to understand what I was doing, to say out loud that it was enough, that I was enough. I had built a successful company in the middle of that longing. I had hired good people and made beautiful things and earned the trust of clients who kept coming back. And somewhere in those 7 years, without quite noticing when it happened, the longing had changed shape. It didn't disappear. I don't think it ever fully disappears. But it stopped being the engine. The engine was the work itself. The moment a space came together. The satisfaction of a detail resolved exactly right after 3 attempts. The particular pleasure of walking through a finished room and knowing from the inside what it cost to make it look effortless. That was what I had been building, not proof, not an argument, a life that belonged entirely to me. My parents had walked into it by accident, on a December evening, in a hotel they had no idea their daughter made. And yes, there was something in that moment. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't. Standing in that lobby with Miss Okafor's introduction still in the air, watching my father's face rearrange itself around a fact that didn't fit his model of who I was. Something in me had been satisfied by that. Deeply, quietly satisfied. But the deeper truth was simpler. I had already won. Not when they walked through the door. Not when my father apologized. Not when my name appeared on the hotel's design credit or in a magazine's shortlist, or on a contract worth more than anything they'd expected from me. I had won years earlier on an ordinary Tuesday when I finally stopped explaining myself to people who weren't listening and turned all that energy toward the thing I was actually trying to build. The rest was just the world catching up,